You're tuning into the Active Mom Podcast with physical therapist, Dr. Carrie Pagliano, a real mom's guide to all things postpartum return to workouts after baby. If you're a postpartum mom, coach, trainer, or physical therapist looking for answers on how to get back to running, CrossFit, yoga, Pilates, HIIT, you name it, without the fear of pelvic floor issues or doing something wrong, this is the podcast for you. Let's start the show. All right. So every once in a while, we have a pelvic floor PT who's been in the space a really long time go off and have a little one. And I always love having the conversation afterwards. Like, what did you know then? And what's been your experience now? So I'm so excited to have Dr. Nicole Cozean on. She's a PT in California. She is all of the things. She hosts I'm going to get this all wrong again, the PT Rising podcast. She is one of the co-founders of PelviCon, and her practice is PelvicSanity. I got it all, yeah? I hope so. I got
You got
it?
it all. All the
Okay,
pelvics,
great. I
all
got
the
it.
things.
And she's got a
Yes.
6-month-old new baby boy, and she's a new mama. So, Dr. Nicole Cozean, welcome to the podcast.
Yay, Carrie. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Definitely learned a lot over
Yes.
this last year and a half. So
Yes. And so starting with, I mean, your journey to be a mom has been on the longer side, which I think is probably more common. Talk a little bit about kind of what that experience was for you, kind of trying to navigate this, not only as, trying to become a mom, but like navigating it as somebody that's in the pelvic health space and working with a lot of pregnant women.
yeah, this was actually really an interesting story. I started my practice, Pelvic Sanity, 7.5 years ago. And at the time, I think like everybody, I was younger, but in my 30s. And it's like, oh, I have time, I have time, I have time. And all of a sudden I wake up and I'm like 38.
Yeah.
And you just assume that everything's going to be super easy peasy. Like all your patients are getting pregnant super fast. And that, ironically actually was the first part of the story. We did get pregnant really fast. And then we have a lot of stories in between that and Clay.
Yes.
So, and I'll share that with you guys here. But so that was a big surprise to me that the time just kind of flew. I had prioritized my clinic and my business, and that was just rocking. I mean, we have a out of network cash-based physical therapy practice in Orange County, California. It is very successful and has been for a really long time. And then I had launched Pelvic PT Rising, my other business, and we have the podcast and the huddle and courses and business mentorship and all of that stuff. And we have these two thriving businesses. And then behind the scenes, it was really, really challenging to keep up with all that stuff as we were going through a fertility struggle, essentially. So not to get too heavy too fast on hi, we're in there for 2 minutes. But so what ended up happening is that we got pregnant pretty fast, and then we lost that pregnancy in a second trimester loss. And for those of you who have had a loss and are especially one that you've had one and are in this space, this pregnancy postpartum space, it's really, really hard. And I was not prepared for that.
Yeah.
And when you have a second trimester loss, all losses are difficult for various reasons. But thinking about the logistics of it, we had told a lot of people, you make your announcement after the first trimester and you think you're safe, and even 4 weeks after that, there's still an issue. And so that was really, really tough. And I was not mentally prepared for all of that. And looking back now at that time of my life, I think what I ended up doing is being like, I'm fine. And then just go back to work. I'll get pregnant again and go back to work and just like compartmentalized to a point of not really being that healthy, quite frankly, almost because I didn't even have time to process because everything was so busy with my businesses. And this is something that I think that not a lot of people talk about because, you know, it's all like, yeah, female entrepreneurship, rah, rah, go, go. And then we forget that it gets messy in the back end with all of the mom guilt and the pregnancy loss. If you have that experience or just the challenges of having someone else take care of your kid and feeling weird about that and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So after that loss, I didn't go to therapy yet. That comes a lot later. And we tried to get pregnant and it wasn't happening. And now all of a sudden I am sort of freaking out that the clock is ticking, quote unquote. COVID happened. And so now I'm like, uh-oh, like what's going on? Why is this not happening? And so we met with some fertility specialists and, you know, I went through an IVF process also while treating patients in this space. Many of my patients were getting pregnant as I was going through that.
It seems like everybody
and I
is.
didn't share that process. Oh, it's like, and I don't know, it's like one of those things. What's that effect? You know, like when you see a red Honda Accord and
Then you see them everywhere.
you're like thinking about buying one and then all of a sudden you have. I feel like that's what that is. And who knows whether or not that's actually, you know, everybody's getting pregnant or it just happens to be that like the same amount of people were getting pregnant before, but and pregnancy announcement is, you know, just a gut punch and all of that. So, you know, through that, you know, and that people don't understand, I think, what everyone's like, oh, you went through IVF. And I feel like we can have a chat about what that actually means.
Yes.
Because I don't think people really get it.
No. And I mean, there's so much to just unpack in that little bit there is like, you know, as somebody who is now your advanced maternal age, you've got pressures there. As somebody who you have successful business, you're doing everything's you've got control over, and now you have this uncontrolled situation. We had a barely second trimester, but same loss between our kids. And it's a different scenario because for you, you're able to go dive, you know, deep back into, you know, work. For me, people are like, well, you should just be happy you already have your baby. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, our situation, I had a DNC, went back 2 weeks later to get it checked. My son was with me. He was like a year and a half at that point. The doctor comes in, they're switching from like paper to EMR. And he comes in, he's like, oh, 15 weeks. Have you felt the baby kick yet? I'm like, dude, you just did my DNC 2 weeks ago. I'm losing my shit. I'm trying to keep it together in front of my kid. Like, that's all next level. And now here, like, again, the fertility stuff, I have patients all the time, like, they don't know what to do because from a stress level, they want to be active and keep moving, but they're told they can't because they don't want to screw it up and they've invested all this stuff and you feel like crap. Like, how do you navigate that?
Gosh, you know, it's so interesting because I feel as a practitioner, I tell all my patients all the time, you know, that's not the OBGYN's area of expertise. They're not movement specialists. They're not exercise specialists. That's what we do. That's what we are. We'll guide you through that. And then we sort of navigate that. Is there any part of your pregnancy that's actually high risk and all the things?
Right.
When you're actually in it, though, this is going to be a theme of this podcast. When you're actually in it, though, it seems like such a high risk thing to do if you're not already motivated to do that. Like, I wasn't going to my therapist at my practice being like, I really have to move. Like, I'm actually have to, this is a little fun fact about me. I would like much rather be a couch potato. I, quite frankly, I know that seems like so crazy as a physical therapist. Like, I understand movement. I think it's amazing. I know it's good for me, but given the opportunity to lay around or go run, I'm like, want to lay around. So sometimes when I see you carry on I'm running here, I'm like, that's terrible.
But that was me before though. But no, I feel you because between like after our miscarriage, running did not feel like the right thing for me to do. And I was like, it just from a deeper place, I was like, that's not, I can't know. And I started going to yoga at a local studio at like 6:30 in the morning with a bunch of 60-year-olds, which was kind of more the pace that I needed. And I was like, I needed to
Yeah.
be in that sadness and that grief, but I knew I needed to move to stay alive, and ended up continuing that through my daughter's pregnancy. But no, I'm with you. Like, again, I have my moments on the couch too, girl. You're just getting the highlights.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think, I feel like it's almost like someone gave me an excuse to like
Yes.
not do anything. And I was
All
like,
good.
oh, and,
Yeah.
it feels like at that moment too, after you have a loss and then you get pregnant again, and then someone's telling you, you know, you really need to, lay low for this whole pregnancy, and stuff like that. Then you're kind of like, okay, like, I mean, at what point do I really need to get out and walk? Like, and I'm a nerd. I looked at all the research with all of the bed rest stuff, and
Mhm.
the research actually shows that it's very mixed. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of big good studies that are done that show that bed rest doesn't actually improve pregnancy outcomes, even in people with high risk pregnancies, for a lot of different
Yeah.
diagnoses. And I didn't really have any diagnosis per se. It's
Yeah.
just that I had loss, because at that point at the point where I got pregnant with Clay, I had 2 losses and a failed transfer. So,
Mm.
um, there was that. And so it's like okay, it was like, it's finally here. I'm just gonna like stay still and hope he keeps hope he keeps growing. Movement wasn't.
Well, I would be the same way. No, that fear, we've got a little bit of time delay, that that keeps popping up, but, no, I felt that way with our daughter. I was just, you're so you're like, "I will do whatever so that this sticks." And you're like, "Please, God, just get to the end of this. Let her be okay. Let this, like," and you're willing to negotiate, and if it means sitting on the couch, you're willing to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting thing. So, and I feel like as a PT now, going back into the clinic, I felt I feel like I had these two people that I was. I was like
Mhm.
you know, be be active, stay active during pregnancy, do all these things. And then there was me on the other hand being like, actually, I'm also not doing that. And I totally get why you wouldn't want to do
Mhm.
that. And I don't even know if I think that that's what you need to be doing anyways.
Mm.
And now it was this real like dichotomy in my brain about like, what am I? What are we doing here? What's our role as physical therapists in the pregnancy
Yeah.
journey now? And so what I've learned now going through the whole process is much more of a really meet people where they are, like,
Yes.
and not just saying that, but like
Yep.
really meeting people where they are and asking questions.
Yes.
Um, and understanding the path that they have taken to get to the point when they're sitting in your office is going to inform everything moving
Moving
forward,
forward.
and it's going to look different for every single person.
Yeah. I think that's such an important thing to have that discussion about expectations as well. And I mean, for you, what were your expectations going into postpartum, and kind of what was the reality for those? Let's go first 6
Oh
weeks because
gosh.
that's usually the hardest part.
Okay.
Ah, and
So
I give you total
I
props, like, you were not on as much, but, like, Jen Esker, that girl, Jen Fraboni, I was like, "Girl, get off the gram." Like,
Yeah. No, I mean, I did go into, like, a little
good.
social break for a little bit
Yeah.
of time, and that was just what we kinda needed to do. But so, fast forward, now I'm pregnant. I will say that the delivery, was something too that I didn't quite understand before, that it's so out of our control. And I know that we can say that, but it really is. And there's so many variables. There's baby variables. There's you variables. There's variables of what the system that you're in, and
Yes.
who you have on your team that day, and all that kind of stuff. I chose to have a hospital-based midwifery birth, and so my goal was unmedicated. That ended up happening for me. I had an amazing doula. That part was awesome. Um, and then you have this baby, and and I think the expectation is that breastfeeding is going to be super easy. That I feel like everybody too that talks about the postpartum period forgets that there's that really early time. And maybe for good reason. Maybe
You're
maybe
meant to forget
evolutionarily
it.
we like forget about that.
Yeah.
We really do. But I tried to really be like remember it and like write stuff down and talk to Jesse about it afterwards and process, because it really is gnarly. And I can't believe now that we wait, as practitioners, we wait to see people until 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I can't. The
Yeah.
early postpartum period is such an area that we could be there for people in a
Yes.
different way than what's your pelvic floor like. Um, I think that obviously there's reasons why this quote unquote 6-week check is when it is, for tissue healing and, uterine healing and all of that. But man, there is so much that we can do for
Oh my
folks
gosh.
in that early postpartum period.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember like almost like being in tears, right? And I tell people every day how to have a first postpartum poop, right?
Mhm.
But when it's you and you feel that urge for the first time, and I went to Jesse and I was like, I think I have to poo, and I'm almost crying, and he was like, okay. And he's like
Yes.
there with me I happened to be fine. I didn't tear, so it didn't hurt. But that the fear of the unknown, I think,
Yeah.
is really
Yeah.
a huge piece that I don't feel like I understood from a patient perspective until I was actually in that space. As
Yeah.
much as I knew, and as much as I teach this every freaking day of my life in for 17 years being a
Yeah.
therapist, it's like those moments were the ones where I'm like, we need to be there for people in that moment, and,
Yeah.
and have tools for that moment,
Yeah.
not with also the mental part of it too.
Yeah. I actually I am a fan of having those conversations much sooner. So in pregnancy, and hopefully this is like that where you are in California. In DC, we have a lot of older moms want to be educated that will come in during pregnancy, and we have the conversation and talk about the stuff that they don't talk about with their OB. Like, these are the possibilities. For me, I did not prepare at all for a C-section. That's what I ended up with my oldest, after a 3-day induction. And I'm like, you need to prepare for all the things. Um,
All of
educate
them.
yourself, hope for the best, but understand that you lost control the second you conceived. Like, it's just the rule of how it is. And
Mhm.
just little
Period.
things. Yes, exactly, period. Um, and little things that just caught me off guard. And some of these are unique to C-section, but we were in the hospital a really long time. We were almost there a week, and just the swelling associated with C-sections. I had to send my mother-in-law to Target to get underwear big enough that I could get my legs through. Like, I couldn't wear my dance clothes home. I had to go to our first pediatrician visit in slippers. Like, I had to send her out to get thigh-high stockings because I had nothing to control the swelling, and then it was in my wrists, and my de veins was off the hook, and just all of those things that, like, I had no freaking sense. And then I'm counting pain pills because everything hurts like a mother. And this kid who apparently you need to burp a baby after you feed them. Who knew, right? And you can't just like fake that one out.
Who knew that?
Who knew? He doesn't give a shit. Like, all of that's going on, and I'm counting freaking pills. And that, for me, I was just like, whoa, that, like, whoever told me that?
Mhm.
No one. you
No
know,
one.
and
No one.
you're
And
go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, and you're just in you're also your focus then is so on baby, and everybody's
Yes.
focus is on baby when it's like and you don't even have the wherewithal to advocate for yourself at that time.
No,
That's where another thing that,
no.
I really I'm trying to build up my patience and like, you need to make sure this and they're like, "Okay." And then in that space, you were just in the most vulnerable
Yes.
place and you're not thinking about you and you would do anything that
Anything.
anybody said if it meant that the baby needed something
Yeah.
and you're just not in that headspace. And so that's where I really feel like now I am like advocating even
Yes.
more hardcore for
Yes.
people to have doulas and support system and who's
Yes.
gonna that's what we're not talking about how to push as much as we
No.
are
Yes.
about who's gonna be there. Are they your same mindset? How are you sure? Have you talked to your family about this? What's your plan
Yep.
for the support during labor, support during delivery, support during
Yeah.
immediately after? Uh, and talking about boundaries around all that, like,
Yeah.
that is what we're talking about more now,
Yeah.
um,
I love that. I mean, I'm glad you got a
versus
yeah. The pushing part, yeah. The doula
Go
part,
ahead.
I think that's become such an important part of the conversation. Anybody that comes in early with me, I'm like, start looking, and they're like, well, I don't know what they do. I'm like, once you start talking to them, you'll figure it out. And we had one our first time around, and she was a midwife in the UK, and she caught a couple of times where like his heart rate wasn't recovering, and she's like, okay, let's look, let's do these things. And so she was and I remember like saying to my husband, "Oh, I can handle this." And I'm like, "Well, why should you have to?" Like, and why should he have to? Um, it to have somebody that you pay to be your advocate. And I think the assumption is that in a health system, you have nursing at your beck and call, and it just doesn't work that way. God forbid there's shift change. I got shift change right before I started to push. That was really shitty too. Um, like those things are the reality, and those are the conversations I have with moms who are pregnant, not to scare them, but do not like everybody wants to demonize induction, everybody wants to demonize pain management. They think they can handle it themselves. I'm like, why? Like there are great like have these discussions, keep talking to your OB about, well, what happens if this, what about this, can I bring this person in, what is it like if you don't like their answer, you're not going to be the person to change their mind. Like
Yes. Yes, totally, and I feel like I had an amazing doula that
good.
actually this is a really cool redeeming story. I had hired her when I first got pregnant with my first pregnancy,
Mm.
and she wasn't after COVID happened, she wasn't doing births anymore, but I called her and because I know her from the birth world, and I was like her name happens to be Nicole too, and I was like, "Nicole, I know you're not doing any births, but if you would make an exception, like, this would be the
Oh.
time."
Right, right.
And I was like, "Or you could help me find somebody." I was like and she said yes, and so it closed this amazing mental loop
Oh,
for me too. We had opened our relationship with the first pregnancy, and the bit well, way back in 2019, and then right at the end of 2022 when Clay was born, she was there right there with me,
oh,
in this really beautiful, like, unmedicated birth, just everything that I wanted about it
yeah,
happened,
yeah,
um, and then, so it was really a cool thing, but she was one of the ones that really prepared us mentally, both Jesse and I, for all of the unknown, and I know that
yeah,
that sounds interesting, if you have not had that experience of being coached to let go, being coached to not being able to control stuff, like,
yes,
that is essentially what they're coaching,
yep,
and then you're also having them there to be your advocate, to slow things down, to help you to make decisions, and just to help you understand the process because you're not in a place where I was a different person, right?
yeah,
I am very typically, you know, very direct, very like, I can handle this and don't talk to me. And who are you, OB/GYN person?
Right.
And I was like a completely different person because not only are you in pain, but you are also there, things are happening fast that you've never
Yes.
felt before in your body. And as body aware as we are, like there were some sensations there. I can remember when Clay sort of moved into this new space in my pelvis and my eyes, I can remember that feeling. And I looked at her and she was like, "It's okay. He's just in a new space." And I was like, and every right
Mm,
now, then I was able to relax and he progressed and within the next like 5 minutes he was out. But there was that's why they're there. They've been in hundreds of births
yes. Yep.
and we've only been in, well, I'd been in 0,
Right.
and even if you've observed some, it's very different to actually be in it yourself. So I feel like
Yeah.
that is what I'm talking to my patients about now, a
Yeah.
lot sooner.
So you guys are 6 months out. Sitting here now 6 months out, what has been the biggest changes, I think, like, physically for you? Like, how are you feeling? Is this what how you expected to feel? Like, what's has there been a point where, things started to change rapidly and sort of to leveled out, or how's it been for you?
So 6 months postpartum, I'm doing mentally wonderful. I think that what's helped during that is the many years of therapy during my,
Yeah.
IVF process. Um, it's funny. I think that, certainly the relationship with your partners change a lot.
Yeah.
But Jesse and I are doing well. We did get in one of our biggest fights ever over 25 mLs of breast milk.
Mhm.
Which seems now so funny. Breastfeeding is going great now.
Good.
It was not going great for the first 4 weeks or so,
That's
which is
hard.
an eternity. But thank God for lactation consultants.
Yes.
And now we are in the exclusively breastfed, go having Clay go on bottle strikes now, which is awesome. So I feel like I can't leave for more than like a couple of hours at a time. But he's learning how to use a sippy cup. I think physically it's interesting because my birth was the actual delivery part was amazing, right? Unmedicated, no tearing, one very small perineal laceration that, not noticeable. I never had any problems sitting or anything like that. But I did have, for whatever reason, a lot of postpartum blood loss. I had to have a transfusion.
Mm.
Um, and no one really knows why. I was bleeding for a lot. I ended up having to have a DNC
Oh
at
my gosh.
9 weeks. I know I haven't really talked about this that much yet. But the thing is, so I feel like that actually, I mean, I feel great now physically, but I think that elongated the
Yep.
time frame of me getting back.
Yep.
Um, physically, so I feel like I'm still working through some of that,
Mhm.
um, and which is also surprising, right? It's just like, I feel like with all of the things that we know is like, shouldn't I feel physically awesome? And it's like, I actually
Mm.
don't. I don't feel great. I don't feel terrible, but I
Yep.
definitely don't feel great. And what I've learned to do is just be like, and that's okay for right now.
Yeah.
I am back to PelvicSanity, not quite treating patients yet, but we're slowly getting pieces of our lives back
Yep.
now with Clay integrated into them. And right now, movement and that kind of stuff is just not a huge
Yeah.
priority.
Honestly, like, I think that's a lovely evolution I've actually seen in a bunch of patients recently is a couple new moms that I was working with were all gung ho to get back to running. And I was like, okay, we can do this. And then maybe they were about 4 months out and I got an email and both of them are like, you know what? I've decided I don't need to push this hard. I want to just stop and kind of enjoy this. And the fact that they came to that realization themselves, I think is so incredibly important because it was a conscious decision that they made to say, I'm not going to push, I'm going to take my time. Whereas if I had said it to them, they're going to fight it tooth and nail. And another situation I'm thinking of, a mom that I work with that I followed her after her second, or I'm sorry, after her first, she had her second, things were going great. And then everybody got sick, and they've been sick for like 4 or 6 months, which it's never been as bad as it's been this year. And but she's doing really well in perspective. And because it's her second, she has that perspective to say, I know I'm going to get back. I'm fine with it just being longer. That you've got that time. And I think with that, there's this pressure that we need to show or prove something to ourselves or to other people. And I don't know where that comes from. And you can still like sit back and logically see it happen, but you still feel that internal pressure sometimes to be like, well, shouldn't I be here? Shouldn't I be somewhere else? Um, and I love that I'm seeing more moms be like, you know what? I'm not going to breastfeed anymore because it's driving me insane and I need sleep. And no, I'm good. Like, I love that I'm seeing more moms kind of take ownership of their experience and not force themselves to do something just because they think somebody else thinks that they should.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that that's so amazing that we're seeing this shift in
Yeah.
some people. And I think that it's been exceptionally interesting for me to like observe myself as a movement person, as a
Yeah.
physical therapist, someone that does that, also saying like, actually, I'm going to prioritize different stuff now. I'm prioritizing sleep. I'm prioritizing
Yes.
water drinking, nutrition, breastfeeding, and
Yep.
then just being and coming back to my businesses in a very stepwise fashion
Yep.
that I'm not we didn't do the thing where it's like, okay, at 3 months I'm back.
Right.
We're able, and we're very fortunate to be able to like gradually get back and add things onto the plate,
Yep.
and to then see how
Intentionally.
we feel very
Yes.
intentionally. And for right now, with all of those different pieces movement and exercise and stuff just isn't on the
Hmm.
priority list. And so that just is what it is. And so
Yep.
I feel like there's a big evolution there for me as a practitioner to understand like I can help my patients through that process as well. And instead of assuming that they're in my clinic because they want to do that,
Right.
really sitting down and asking, is movement, is getting back to exercise a
Yes.
priority for you? And
Yes.
if it is, great, I could get you there, right? We can
Yep.
do all of that stuff. But if it isn't, then what else can my expertise help you with
Right.
then? And that still can be nutrition and,
Yeah.
other aspects, and mindfulness
Yep.
and breastfeeding postures and that kind of stuff. We still have, so that's why our profession is so amazing, is that there are other aspects of our knowledge base that we can impart, and
Yes.
help people with. It doesn't
Yes.
have to be like, here, I need your hip to move this way to do this yoga stretch.
Right.
It's like we
Yeah.
have so much other I can help your scar, I can help your sex, I can help you prioritize sex, I can help you do a lot of other things. And that's where I feel like, I hope that we get to as a profession where everybody is asking those questions
Yes.
and truly doing an individualized care, and not imparting like, oh, you have to be doing this. I need you to get and walk
Right.
every day because that's what is the next step to it, more exercise. It's like, well,
Yeah.
for some people, that's just not the phase of life that they're at.
Yeah. And a couple of things. I mean, I think it's so incredibly important to hold space for whatever that is and not make that assumption. I'll have women that come in and they're like, well, it's almost they're apologetic. They're like, oh, I'm not a runner, or not do this or not do that. I'm like, I don't care. That's fine. I think the other thing, and this goes back to the comment that you made in the beginning, you're like, oh, I see you doing this all the time, or you're running, or doing this. My kids are 9 and 12. Like,
Right.
I have like whole other like y'all didn't see what happened in those first couple years, and I am so happy that I did not have to live those years out on social media. Like, I can't imagine trying to process and trying to figure that out while being in the pelvic space. And because it was a shit show, I'm going to be
Yeah,
upfront. Like, I
totally.
did not move that much. After my first, I did start running again and that sort of thing. But between the kids with a miscarriage and I like that's the thing that I think we make assumptions about what's going on with other people and we forget people are in different seasons.
Stages for sure.
And the other thing when you're early postpartum, I did this is I would project everything for like 16 years and be like, all right, well, if they don't do this now, then like, oh my God. and here's the thing that's funny about that. I made my son's baby food from scratch, and he ate all the things, and now he only eats 7 things, and he's 12, and, it just there's a lot of things you don't have a control over. Um, but just if you decide that it is not the time or the space now, doesn't mean it's off the table forever. I'm in a place now where, like, my kids are home on video games because our sitter hasn't started for the summer yet, and I'm here. I went to the gym at 5:30 this morning because I can leave the house and they're asleep and dad's asleep and I'm not going to get sent to jail, like that kind of stuff, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's stuff that I could not go work out early, which was really hard for me because I'm a morning workout person because my kid was up at dark 30 and needed to be nursed and needed this and needed that, and I could not get out. And so I in one hand, it's you wanna help people find what they're looking for, but I think you hold a really good point of meet people where they are and support whatever space that is or whatever they need in that moment. Or if your house is stricken with like 17,000 illnesses, you're not behind. It's just gonna take us a little bit longer to get wherever it is that you might wanna go.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I yeah, hear you on all that. That's so important. And I think that that comparison-itis that we have is really terrible. And to the point too where even like, I've had issues with my mom with, oh, we didn't do it that way and
Mm,
what are you doing? Oh, he seems to be, he they even made a comment. It's actually funny that he seems to be going up and down for naps quite a bit. And I feel like everybody, in the later stages, or parent age forgets that that they forget the newborn stage. I feel like Clay was born and they thought he was going to be a toddler. You know what I mean?
right,
And so I feel like there's been that to navigate and we don't talk about that stuff, right?
right.
And it's just funny. I feel like being here has just given me so much perspective on that this is hard and your life
Yes.
is lived in 2 to 3 hour increments and now we're living in 4 hour increments now because we can go a little bit longer, but like that's still very much like how
Yes.
we live our lives. And what happens then is those 4 hour increments, like your days, the phrase "your days are long, years are short" is really it. It feels like an
Yes.
eternity to get through a day when you're living your life in 2 hour increments.
Yes.
And so I I don't know how else to explain that other than to have everybody experience it somehow, but
Yeah.
but that's why I feel like sometimes then if you're talking about something a week from now, like that's like a lot of
A
sleeps
lot
per
of water
day.
under the yes.
You know what I mean? I'm like, I can't think that far. I don't know. Like, it's
No. Well, and
so
that's the thing kind of looking ahead that it's a conversation I have a lot with moms that they're out of that initial, deer in headlights survival mode, and they're like, "Okay, I got this now." And I'm like, "Well, there's going to be transitions." And that's one of the things I talk about is like, build habits for when things are going well. But the best thing you can do is recognize all of a sudden when things are off the rail, go into your survival, do what you need to do to, get your mask on first and then help the people around you because they're constantly coming up. They come up for me now. Teething, growth spurts, you know, you've probably got like more reasonable kind of clearer nap times when you go from 3 naps to 2, when you go from 2 to 1, when you go from 1 to nothing. Shit show. Like,
yeah,
and the one that I think is so evil and makes no sense is that an overtired baby will not sleep.
doesn't wanna sleep. I'm like, "Who told no one told you that."
No, no. When you are tired, you sleep. And apparently kids didn't get that message. Like, what the hell?
No, it's so hard. And you can see it too. It's like
Oh,
you can
they
see it in their
lose
little eyes. They're so tired,
mm,
and it's just like it's so
mm,
funny. And then you have somebody wants to come visit at that
mm-mm,
time, and they're like,
mm-mm,
"Oh, you want needs to play," and I'm like, "Oh my god, he
mm-mm.
needs to do everything but
No,
play right now."
no, 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 no. Yeah,
Yeah.
no. And I think, when you kind of settle into parenthood and you start to realize like, oh yeah, you can play with you, but you're going to leave and I'm stuck with what the leftovers are like that.
Right.
Then you start laying down the law.
Right.
But again, like once you kind of get through that first survival, like I'll never forget when they dropped naps. Like my daughter was so freaking funny. I think she was like 1. My son was 3 or 4, and he was done with preschool at like 1 o'clock, which was right around her nap time. She was just taking 1 nap a day, and I would have to like scoop him, grab him, and pray to God she didn't fall asleep in the car. Sometimes I'm like, stay awake,
Right.
And one
I
day we're
know.
driving home, and he's like, Annalie is not taking a nap, and I'm like, yeah, she is, and she's like, no nap, and I'm like, what? She dropped her nap when she's 1 year old. I'm like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
when they start plotting against you, you're really screwed.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, I'm like on this island by myself, and the villagers are like, they're going at it. You're like,
Yeah, you're like, "What is happening to my life?" Yeah, and I feel like, Carrie, to your point, I feel that the best advice that I feel like I've learned over this
mhm.
time has just been I've never, like, lived more in the moment than I
Oh
have
yeah.
right now, which is so not my personality. I literally feel like I'm
mm,
a different person, but it really
yeah.
has um, been really kind of neat though as
Yeah.
well to just be like, if someone asks me like what I'm doing in 2 weeks, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. Or I've been late a few times and normally I'm not late or I've had
Yeah.
to move a meeting. And it's just like, I really have learned to sort of be
It's
unapologetic about that.
yes.
It's just like, "Hey, this is sort of what my life is right now, and if you want
Yes.
me to do this thing, then you're gonna have we might have to reschedule, and that's gonna be okay." And that is
Yeah.
so I feel like I mean, and we are different people, but I feel like my therapist, my mental health therapist helped
Yeah.
prepare me really well for that kind
Yeah.
of shift. So super big advocate for mental health therapy through this
Yes.
time. I mean,
Yeah.
it was necessary for sure with my fertility journey. But what I didn't realize is that it was also helping me to prepare for being a mom. And
Yeah.
it's been really, really neat to see some
Well,
of those skills now being translated into postpartum life.
you will keep using them. The beauty with age as well. I'm a little bit older than you, but the older you get, the less Fs you have to give. So that goes right along with that, which is lovely.
Right.
But I think that the other thing is we get so caught up in like these first few years postpartum and, not looking ahead and be like, okay, what if my kid has learning challenges? Which one of mine does? How do we handle social situations in the face of worldwide pandemic? Like that was a new one, not on my
Mm.
bingo card.
Yeah.
Um, I have 2 kids now. One is a little slow on the hormonal end, the other one's a little fast. I'm gonna have 2 kids going through puberty at the same time. Pray for me. Like conversations with my 9-year-old about periods and hormones and explaining to her what sex is. And now she thinks it's totally gross, which I love.
Nice. Good
She's
for
like,
now.
ew.
Perfect.
Like there's always something that's coming. And there's days now where I have patients that come in with their babies. I'm like, I could handle peeing, pooping, sleep. Like I'm all over that. Like I could totally take that for a day or two. But when you're in it, it's like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally. Gosh, that's so funny. And to me that seems again, days are long, years are short. Like that stuff seems so far away, but it's gonna
it's
come
not.
fast. I
It's not.
know.
This was the year that I really, because my son started middle school this year, so he's a rising 7th grader now, and my daughter's finishing her last year of elementary school, that I've really been like, "Wow, like, have I lost my legitimacy now with all the baby mamas because I have, like, older
Oh,
kids?"
interesting.
And it's it's a strange thing because you remember all that stuff vividly, and I probably pay attention to it a lot more because I have more conversations like this with moms who are in that space, but, like, dang, it went fast, and I'm like, they're gonna be gone soon,
Yeah.
And you're like, "How did I let that go by so fast?" And it I guess that's just getting older too and less fucks to give, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, hug that little baby, but getting to know them and getting to be around them and being an example for them. I mean, Clay's going to feel that already with you, that, he's got these two parents that, yes, they dote on him, love them, but they've built this amazing, environment for women to heal and learn and, support employees and that kind of stuff too. That's the other stuff that in the background of all this, you're inadvertently, sharing that energy with them. Is just, when you look at it in the rear view, you're like, dang, that was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
And then, I feel like I've never ever in my entire life, I mean, I felt privileged before.
Yeah.
But I've never felt as privileged as I have felt in this postpartum period, because I
Yeah.
do have the resources and the support
Yeah.
and all the things. And I can take him to work with me because I
Mhm.
own the joint, and I
Right.
can have the pack and play
Yep.
in my office with the nap situation. And, like that's really awesome. But it does make me feel good to know that, like, because I'm schlepping him along with me now to the clinic, like, he is actually seeing, and will, as he starts to become more aware, like, he's going to see his mom, like, handle some
Yep.
business, and really, like, this is the
Yeah.
clinic, and he's playing with pelvises and that kind of stuff. So I'm excited for that. And I'm really grateful to my PelvicSanity team and to, Jesse and all the people that make that happen. So I guess the other thing that I've learned is, like, behind every behind every mom is
Village.
like a village of people that allow them to, like, exist in the in the world. If you have makeup on today, it's like, whoa, what, you're having a great morning, you know?
I quit that a long time ago. That way there's no expectations there. So
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, but I feel just really thankful to
yeah.
everybody, and I know that not everybody has all of
Yeah.
that ability, but I do feel like to look for those things in people where it's like sometimes, there's a lady, I happen to be breastfeeding Clay in the wild, as I call it.
Yes.
And it was really cool. And most people are just passing by, no big deal. Every once in a while, you'll get the stink eye where, you kind of want to have, like, your little middle finger
Yep.
tucked up under behind the baby's
Yeah.
back. But there was this one lady who came up, and she was like, and she like looked at me, and she was like, "Good job, mama." And I was like,
Oh.
yes. And it was like, in those 3 words, there was,
Yeah.
like, so much, like, yeah,
Yeah.
I am doing a good job, and this
Yes.
shit's hard. And
Yes.
that, and I think that the more that we can do that for people as we are around the
Yes.
world, I think that the
Yes.
world will be a better place. That's a little small piece of something you could do
Yes.
for moms, just being
To
like, "I see you, and I know
yes.
that this is shit's hard."
Yes.
So,
And then you
thumbs
turn
up.
around and you say thank you.
Yes,
You don't
thanks.
explain, you don't, you
Thank
say thank you.
thanks. Yeah, and it's like that was such a cool moment, and there was also one other moment I'll share too, where literally the first time Clay and me and Jesse actually got out of the house, and he was probably like a week old at that point, or maybe 2 weeks old at that
Mhm.
point, and we're, like, going on our first stroller ride, and we barely know how to put him in the thing,
Mhm.
and, it's kinda sunny, and I'm not sure if he's, like, warm enough, and I'm checking, we're walking down the pier in San Clemente, and every 2 seconds, I'm pulling up the thing, like, looking
You're
in,
checking.
and this checking it, making sure he's fine, feeling his feet, all the things. And this this lady comes by, and she's, like, passing me, and she sees me. I think she probably saw me checking. She was like, "Is he still in there?" And she was and I was like, it was just this moment of, like, "Oh, yeah, he's gonna be fine." And she was like, He's pretty little, right?" And because she could see his little feet. And
Mhm.
I said, "Yeah, this is, like, our first outing." And she was like, "Good job. It gets so much fun." And, like, she just was, like, super awesome.
Aw.
And I
We
was just
need
like,
more of those.
we need
Yeah.
more of that, like, instead of
Yes.
yeah, I was like,
Yes.
that was a really, really amazing thing. So if anybody is in this podcast and they see a mom
Yep.
doing great or struggling, just, like, give them a little thumbs up, give them a little pat on the back,
Yep.
Show them some love.
Remember what that moment feels like. And I will never forget my dear friend Anna Fragamini she's a pediatric PT, took me out for my first breastfeeding in the wild. And I remember exactly where it was. And, it's those pay it forward moments too. Be like, okay, I will help you. I see you. I know this is hard. Like that stuff is just so incredibly important. So
yeah, for the very first time I did that, Jessica Real was actually out in we were meeting up for PelviCon, and he was over here for CSM, and Clay was like, a couple months old, and she was like, it was the first time where I was like, I didn't have to rush home to feed him, and I was like, okay, we're gonna do this, and I was like, I don't even know how, and she was like, oh, come here, blah blah blah. She's like, gets me all situated, and it was just like this really cool moment of like, oh, I can do this, and we didn't have to leave the restaurant. This is awesome,
Like, oh, you're portable. That's a new one. I love that.
Right. It's just like awesome. And then she went to go change his diaper for me, and I had forgotten wipes, and so I was like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, it's like when you take the dog out without the bags, right? You're like, oh crap.
Yeah, but that was just really funny.
Yeah, totally. All right, at the end of each show, we ask a couple questions to all of our guests. First one, favorite activity since becoming a mom?
Ooh.
It doesn't have to be with Clay.
Yeah, right. I do love, though, watching him learn things in real time, like learn something, a new task in real time.
That's so fun. Especially, I think when you have like a movement background and you took peds and that kind of stuff too, and you're like, oh wow, that's really where that starts. That's so cool. Yeah, that's a good one. All right, next one. One piece of advice for new moms.
One piece of advice. I think I already said it, but well, I'll sum it up. Give yourself grace for the stage that you're in. That's what I would say.
That answer comes up probably 95% of the time that I've asked it. So I love that, grace is the
theme.
Yes. So important. All right. Who is somebody, I'm curious to see your answer of this. Who's someone in kind of our space, pregnancy, postpartum, that we don't know that we should know about?
Ooh, let me think half a beat. Who is someone in the pregnancy and postpartum space that we should know about? You know what? You might know about them. Well, we'll see. I think Yenny Abraham.
Oh, yeah.
Is doing some really, really, really cool stuff around fertility and how therapists, pelvic floor therapists can be in that space.
Yes.
I feel like she's really on like some of the leading edge of that subspecialty of our field. So
I like that.
I think that there's some really cool stuff that she's gonna she already has, and that some stuff that she's gonna blow our specialty out of the water on.
I like it. Like it. Awesome. And then last one for you, what does it mean to you to be an active mom in postpartum?
To me, if it means to be active for whatever it is that day. I feel like the definition now of active doesn't mean like exercise. I feel like an active mom could mean me being on hands and knees on the playmat with Clay, and maybe I'll do a couple bridges. Like, I feel like, that is what an active mom in postpartum means. And maybe and that will probably change. But that's what it means for me right now.
I love that. Again, like I have a feeling that we probably had very, very similar kind of early postpartum experiences and how much we were moving and that sort of thing. And I think the expectation too, that just because we're in physical therapy means we need to be doing crazy stuff all the time. That does, we don't need that extra weight. We don't need that extra guilt.
No. Just to go back half a beat, like I do also feel like what we don't understand as well, like I was on bed rest for a lot of my pregnancy. And so I feel like even if I tried right now to move, it's not happening like that.
It needs to be just so much more gradual. And and that's honestly, when I asked you to be on, one of the things that I thought was going to be part of the conversation, because when you have a fertility journey, when you have all that stuff, there's so many limitations. And so I think to give voice to women, that they don't feel pressured, that, you had this experience, your pace is going to be different, and that's okay. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad that thread came through. That was what I was secretly hoping. So thanks
Yeah.
for hammering that one in. I love it.
Yeah,
I love
man.
it.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. If you'd like to know more about Nicole and her practice, and a little bit more about her and her postpartum experience, she's on Instagram at PelvicSanity is her business, and then at Nicole Cozean PT. Thank you, my dear, and congratulations. I
Yay.
love watching this journey. I'm so happy for you guys. And I
Thank
can't wait
you.
to give you big mama hugs one day in person, one of these
Yes.
days.
I know. And then Carrie, honestly, this podcast is so awesome. I love that you're having these real conversations. So really appreciate you for having me on, and then giving us the space to talk about this kind of stuff. Love it.
Thank you.